Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Maverick News Channel. Thanks for joining me here again tonight. Just before we get started, I'm just checking the feed, and yes, we are live on the main channel this evening. I appreciate you guys joining me. And before we get into our first short transitionary break, this: lying is a sin. Exodus 2016, from the Ten Commandments. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Proverbs 12:22. The Lord detests lying lips, but he delights in people who are trustworthy. Ephesians 4:25. Therefore each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor. In Colossians 3:9. Do not lie to each other. Tonight, Donald Trump. Accusations of lying swirling around him, and also accusations of market manipulation. Very dishonest. And last night on our program, I'm not sure what that was, but it sure wasn't the truth. More when we come back. Stay with me.
Maverick News isn't just a news outlet, it's a community of truth seekers. Your donation at freedomreporters.com fuels our mission to report the stories that mainstream media won't touch. Thank you, Maverick family.
And we're back. So, tonight, oh my goodness, what's going on with Donald Trump? Allegations of possible market manipulation swirling around President Trump's latest statements on the Iran conflict. Monday morning, just minutes before U.S. stock markets opened, President Trump posted on Truth Social claiming the U.S. had held very good and productive conversations with Iran over the weekend. He announced a 5-day pause in planned strikes on Iranian power plants and energy sites. You may recall we highlighted the allegations of him possibly lying about these talks taking place. And so his announcement reversed a weekend threat to obliterate that infrastructure unless Tehran opened the Strait of Hormuz. The reaction, immediate. Oil prices plunged more than 10%, with Brent crude dropping below $100 a barrel for the first time in nearly 2 weeks. Stocks then surged. The Dow Jones jumped nearly 1,000 points at the open. It was welcome relief for investors worried about soaring energy costs from this now month-long U.S.-Israel war with Iran. But Iran pushed back hard. Tehran's foreign ministry and parliament speaker flatly denied any talks ever took place. They're like, what's he talking about? We're not engaged in any negotiation, no talks. I don't know what it is. The parliament speaker called the announcement fake news designed to manipulate the financial and oil markets. And you may recall, I also made reference to that possibility back on Monday. Now, adding fuel to the fire, financial analysts and media outlets are now reporting that they've noticed, or they noticed on Monday, an extraordinary spike in the trading data just before the president's post. Roughly $580 million in oil futures contracts changed hands in a single minute, with heavy bets the prices would fall. Now, you may recall last night in my conversation with our friend Brandon Pringle, separatist from Alberta. What came up? Derivatives, futures. We spoke about it just a little bit, briefly. It was interesting. He'd been reading Mark Carney's book called Values. Values, that would suggest someone might have morals or scruples. And Brandon jumped straight to the accusation, of course, that derivatives were all designed so that Mark Carney could use the rules, bend the rules for his own devices. I think maybe we're looking in the wrong direction. Now, I can't say if anybody, including Mark Carney, is squeaky clean on anything. Anybody that gets involved in financials, anybody wants to talk about banksters, right? But I do see this. I see this. Now, you can't necessarily prove from this that any one person did any one thing or did anything even maybe illegal, but you might not be able to prove a cause of fire, but we can sure as heck see the smoke. Yeah, and then adding fuel to this fire now, this concern, maybe a scandal in the making, maybe. You've got these reports from pretty credible media sources and even economists like Paul Krugman, who takes it all the way. I mean, it's so serious. It's so serious. This is the kind of stuff that the amount of money involved, people should be going to jail if it's true. And the data suggests something very strange happened. And it is not the first time. Paul Krugman, economist. Treason in the futures markets. This is from his Substack. Also published on Yahoo Finance. Over the weekend, Donald Trump threatened dire vengeance, he says, on Iran unless its government opened the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours, a deadline that would expire Monday evening in Washington. Specifically, he announced that the U.S. would begin bombing power plants, plants that supply electricity to Iran's civilian population, unless the strait was cleared. But at 7:05 a.m. Monday, Trump called the whole thing off for 5 days, he said. But many people are assuming that the threatened action, which would have been a massive war crime, is now off the table. The reason for the about-face, he claimed, was that the U.S. was engaged in productive negotiations with Iranian officials. Although this seems to have come as news to the Iranians, who denied any such negotiations are taking place. Sad to say, in this case, as I tried to explain yesterday, this Krugman speaking, I'm reading, the fanatical, brutal Iranian regime is more credible than the President of the United States. Is he lying or living in a fantasy world? Neither possibility is comforting. But in any case, Trump's sudden climb down was startling. Who could have seen this coming? The answer is the person or people who bought large quantities of stock market futures and sold large quantities of oil futures around 15 minutes before Trump's announcement, as CNBC reports, which states at around 6:50 a.m. in New York, Standard & Poor's 500 E-mini futures trading on the CME recorded a sharp and isolated jump in volume, breaking from an otherwise subdued pre-market backdrop. With thin liquidity typical of early trading hours, the sudden burst stood out as one of the largest volume moments of the session up to that point. A similar pattern was observed in oil markets. West Texas Intermediate May futures also saw a noticeable pickup in trading activity at roughly the same time, with a distinct volume spike interrupting otherwise quiet conditions. Back to Krugman. This sharp and isolated jump in volume, he says, which you can see for the oil futures market in the chart at the top of this post, was especially bizarre because there were no major news items, no major publicity available news items to drive sudden big market transactions. The story would be baffling, except that there's an obvious explanation. Somebody close to Trump knew what he was about to do and exploited that inside information to make huge instant profits. This wasn't the first time, he says, something like this has happened under Trump. There were large suspicious moves in the prediction market, poly market, before previous attacks on Iran and Venezuela. But this front-running of U.S. policy was really large. The Financial Times estimates the sales of oil futures in that magic minute, 1 minute is all it took, Monday morning, at about $580 million. That's over $500 million. And that doesn't count the purchases of stock futures. As I understand it, based on the way things went, a lot of barrels of oil sold, and when you flip them and trade them in this fashion at that time, whoever was doing this was making about $10 a barrel. And that's a lot of barrels. $580 million worth. Krugman goes on, when officers of a company or people close to them exploit confidential information for personal financial gain, that's insider trading, which is illegal. But we have another word for situations in which people with access to confidential information regarding national security, such as plans to bomb or not to bomb another country, exploit that information for profit. That word is treason. Why is profiting from insider information about national security decisions, he says, effectively a form of treason? These are his words. First, he says, it's hard to think of a more fundamental principle for officials we entrust with important decisions, especially those that involve national security. They are people they know should not be allowed to exploit their positions for personal gain. Well, we know that Trump is corrupt. The president of, not peace, the president of gold. What does he worship? Krugman continues, second, financial trading based on what should be closely held secrets reveals information to current or potential foreign adversaries. To exaggerate a bit, but only a bit, who needs to bribe agents within the government or recruit them with honey traps when you can infer the same information by keeping track of transactions on futures markets? Finally, there isn't that big a gap between using knowledge of national secrets to make lucrative financial trades or simply selling those secrets to the highest bidder. Once you're breached that line, that says you shouldn't profit personally from access to information that it is or should be highly classified. The line between trading based on state secrets and selling those secrets directly is a blurry one. In fact, he says, I'd very much like to know exactly who was making those trades yesterday morning. Were they people directly in the know or billionaires, traders who paid people in the know for tips? I'm sure we'll find out once Kash Patel's FBI carries out its careful, no-holds-barred investigation. For the humor impaired, that was a joke. However, I do believe that the culprits will be easy to determine once Democrats are back in power, and they must apply the full force of law to the people responsible. I will not continue. You've got the gist I'm not going to continue here with this, but there's the chart. There's the price spike. I know, some of you have Trump derangement syndrome, but it's not me. If you can't see what's right in front of you, you might be suffering from TDS blindness. There was some of that going on last night, too. Not from me. And it saddens me. When people I care about, people I like, people I trust suffer. Let's go straight to the man himself, Paul Krugman, economist. This is his follow-up today.
Donald Trump has, at least for the time being, called off plans to bomb Iran's civilian infrastructure. He has done so because, according to him, highly productive negotiations are underway involving the government of Iran, an invisible 6-foot white rabbit, and his Canadian girlfriend. Hi, I'm Paul Krugman. What I just said is not strictly true, or it's not all true. Trump did not say anything about the invisible rabbit or the Canadian, but the gist of it is true. He said that there's highly productive talks underway, and shortly afterwards, the Iranian government and Iranian state media said, no, they aren't. This is not happening. Not going to say that the Iranian state media is necessarily a credible source, but the odds are that they are, in fact, telling the truth, and the President of the United States is either lying or fantasizing, or both. There's really no reason at all to believe that anything like what he said is happening is, in fact, happening. Why do I say that? Aside from the fact that Trump has not exactly been truthful on a lot of things, but beyond that, there are 3 important reasons to believe he might be making this stuff up. First, he put himself in a very bad spot with his threat to commit a massive war crime if Iran doesn't open the Strait of Hormuz, and must be looking for a way out. Another president at another time might say that on careful consideration, we have recalibrated the policy or something like that. Trump doesn't do that. Trump is always winning, never admits that he's had a setback, never admits that he's changed his mind. So saying that, but the Iranians have come to the table, probably big, strong Iranians with tears in their eyes. But anyway, that the Iranians have come to the table, and that's why we're not doing what I said we would do, is a very Trumpian out. Second, why would the Iranians be making a deal at this point? We can talk a lot about how the war is going, but it's pretty clear that as the Iranians are likely to see it, they're winning. I mean, they're not winning militarily, but that was never on the cards. They have successfully turned what was supposed to be a lightning decapitation of their government into a protracted contest in relative ability to bear pain. And all indications are that the Iranians are nowhere near cracking, and all indications are that the United States, although obviously we're not losing thousands of people, and we aren't having our whole life disrupted, but the American public really doesn't like higher gas prices. It does not believe Trump. The clock is ticking for Trump on this in a way that it is apparently not for the Iranian regime. So Iran has the upper hand here, and very hard to see why they would be wanting to make a deal until they've basically humiliated us substantially more. Finally, consider possible motives. Imagine that you were somebody close to Trump, somebody close enough to actually have an influence on his decisions as well as inside knowledge. Here's what you could have done, really just between last night and now. You could have sold a bunch of crude oil futures that at very high prices. Brent was over $112 over the weekend. Then bought them back immediately after Trump's announcement of triumphal progress, but before the Iranians said that is not happening. And you could have turned a very, very nice, very large profit. To say that insider trading might be driving U.S. policy would have been outrageous in the past. Who thinks that that's beyond the realm of possibility now? So all of this could be happening. Last point to make here. Think about how much America's position in the world has been weakened, not just by apparent failure to subdue a fourth-rate power, but by the fact that everybody now knows that you cannot trust anything, cannot trust any promises the United States makes. You cannot count on the United States carrying through with promises, with threats. Not just promises, but threats are also not incredible in the sense of not being at all credible. And that the default assumption should be that anything that this administration says is a lie. That is a really, really bad thing. That is, influence in the world power is not simply a matter of missiles and bombs, although we seem to be running low on those too. It's very much a matter of people taking what you say and what you promise and what you threaten seriously. And we are not ruled by serious people. Have a great day.
Do you think that democracy still has the credibility?
Thank you for alerting me to the no audio issue. I've been saying for, quite some time, since Trump came back into office. I'll be right back.
Maverick News isn't just a news outlet, it's a community of truth seekers. Your donation at freedomreporters.com fuels our mission to report the stories that mainstream media won't touch. Thank you, Maverick family.
Okay, here we go. So, I know, the audio, it's all right. We're cool. All right, take that down. I need another moment because that just threw everything into a tizzy here. I'll be right back. Hang on.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
So the story continues today, of course, and Iran's state-owned Press TV reported today that the Iranian regime has rejected a list of points sent by the Trump administration via an intermediary. In a bid to get peace talks going, Tehran is actually mocking Donald Trump online tonight. And that's not to say that the Trump administration didn't make some effort to reach out to the Iranian regime, but they really don't seem to know exactly who to talk to. There are reports that they're maybe looking for someone inside the Iranian government who would basically betray the leadership and facilitate some sort of another decapitation strike, a coup, where they could go in like they did in Venezuela and take out the leader, and then make a deal of some kind. Now, Trump is saying tonight that if Iran doesn't make a deal, he will unleash hell. Let's get you the clip here of Caroline Leavitt at the White House today, addressing this just not long ago. And here we go via CBS.
The core objectives of Operation Epic Fury and this military mission continues unabated. From the outset, President Trump and the Department of War estimated it would take approximately 4 to 6 weeks to achieve this critical mission. 25 days in, the greatest military the world has ever known is ahead of schedule and performing exceptionally.
CBS News White House.
But it doesn't seem to be going quite as smoothly as Trump had hoped, because we've still got this big blockage in the Strait of Hormuz tonight, and it is affecting oil prices. Let's go and just in real time take a look and see where oil prices are tonight. Crude oil price this evening. Up and down like a bit of a yo-yo. Put it on the screen for you. Come on. There we go. Come on. Finally, we're sluggish now. Finally, up on the screen she goes, and we are looking. WTI crude $90, 96 cents. Brent crude back up to 102. Merban crude 105. Houston, we have a problem. Oil prices, and that's going to fuel inflation. And we're looking at serious energy issues, around the world as a result of this. This is a big problem for the world economy. And Iran is not backing down. Trump's not getting what he wants. And now we have these additional accusations of potentially insider trading. Well, worse than that, market manipulation, market control. Raises questions about integrity. And also, just within the last couple of days, we've seen this letter sent to Attorney General Pam Bondi from the U.S. Congress. And, again, like, it's right in front of your eyes. From the U.S. Congress, House of Representatives, Committee on the Judiciary. Attorney General Bondi. We have long known that As he left office in 2021, President Donald Trump stole classified documents, hoarded them in the ballrooms and bathrooms of his Mar-a-Lago clubhouse, defied subpoenas, and obstructed law enforcement. One lingering question has been why? Why would Donald Trump go to such extraordinary lengths to steal classified documents, hoard them, and refuse to return them? Together with Donald Trump, your Department of Justice has been fighting tooth and nail to gag Special Counsel Jack Smith and bury his report in order to cover up the answer to this key question. For the past year, DOJ has been working with Republicans of the House Judiciary Committee to wage a campaign of retribution against career prosecutors and federal agents who did their duty, followed the facts and the law, and investigated Donald Trump both for conspiring to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election and for hiding and lying about the classified documents he stole. As part of this effort, DOJ earlier this month produced yet another set of cherry-picked documents relating to Jack Smith's Arctic frost and plasmic echo investigations, apparently blinded by the frenzied search to find any scrap of evidence that could be twisted and distorted to level an attack against Special Counsel Smith. Despite constantly coming up empty-handed, you have quite amazingly missed the fact that some of the documents you provided include damning evidence about your boss's conduct and may well violate the gag order your DOJ and Donald Trump demanded from Judge Eileen Cannon. In bold text here, it says, these new disclosures suggest that Donald Trump stole documents so sensitive that only 6 people in the entire U.S. government had access to them, that the documents President Trump stole pertaining to his business interests, and that Susie Wiles, then the CEO of Donald Trump's super PAC, witnessed President Trump showing off a classified map to passengers on his private plane. This glimpse into the trove of evidence behind the cover-up reveals a president of the United States who may have sold out our national security to enrich himself. It goes on. As Special Counsel Smith, it says, and his deputies appeared before Congress. They could not answer this committee's questions about the classified documents case under threat of potential federal prosecution because of the gag order Judge Cannon issued at the request of Donald Trump. Judge Cannon's protective order broadly prevents the disclosure to the public of any discovery materials or any information derived therefrom. Mr. Smith's authorization letter from DOJ expressly prohibited him from discussing Volume 2 of the Special Counsel's report and any information or conclusions in the Volume 2 or in drafts thereof. Scrolling down, most damning is what these documents, cherry-picked by your own DOJ for disclosure, show about President Trump's conduct. They include a January 13th, 2023 memorandum in which prosecutors wrote that the Federal Bureau of Investigation has determined that the classified documents President Trump retained from the White House, quote, were commingled with documents created after Trump left office. FBI also found that certain classified documents President Trump improperly retained would be pertinent to certain business interests. DOJ prosecutors further assessed that these classified documents pertinent to his business interests established a motive for retaining them. We must have those documents. Integrity, that's another issue. It's important. And people should be asking questions, I think, at this point, because we have tonight thousands of U.S. soldiers, including the 82nd Airborne, on their way to the Middle East. On their way to the Middle East.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
Yeah, lying is a sin. Normally, market manipulation would be a very serious crime that would get you like a really serious jail sentence. You're in the White House, you have the tariff levers at your control. You get to make policy. You even get to make the rules on things like cryptocurrency. And we know that some people wanted increased regulations for the cryptocurrency markets. And when Trump came back into office, cryptocurrencies, which he at one point poo-pooed, didn't want to have anything to do with them, said he didn't have any faith in them. And now he fully embraces them. During the election, he went after those Bitcoin votes because all the people that knew that were invested in Bitcoin, who really understand how it works, they knew that if he got into office and he embraced Bitcoin, which he did, if he followed through with his promise to keep more regulation out of the market, that and follow through maybe even on promises of the U.S. government investing in Bitcoin, the value of Bitcoin was going to skyrocket. And indeed, after he came into office, what happened? It did. It spiked. Bitcoin hit a sky high record of about $128,000 or $129,000 U.S. And then with all the pulling and pushing of the tariff levers and all the announcements about 25% on this country today and on that sector, on again, off again, all these different countries, Bitcoin has crashed, losing about half of its value. And then, of course, there's always the official Trump coin. You know, it all comes down to trust. Why would you invest in anything? Why would you invest in even the U.S. dollar or the U.S. stock market? And I think it was Krugman there who said that now people don't trust the United States for anything. You run the risk of destroying the U.S. economy because of this stuff. This is why the chair of the Federal Reserve is not under the control of the President of the United States. Trump's trying to get control of the Federal Reserve. He wants to be the chair of the Federal Reserve. It's supposed to be arm's length, operate independently as they set interest rates and make adjustments on monetary policies. But if you are seen to be manipulating and controlling things, which Trump clearly has the ability to do, people lose trust. Today, all through time, the one thing that provides for a stable money supply, a stable economy in general, is trust. You undermine the trust. You breach that, and you shatter the value of anything you have in terms of a dollar, any kind of bonds, T-bills. It's all gone. People won't invest in it because they don't trust it. Would you put your money into a bank if you knew that the person running it was guilty of theft? Would you give your money to a thief if you weren't sure you can get it back out? If you can't trust the government to provide even the deposit insurance that backs up a portion or maybe all of your money in your bank account, if you can't trust that anymore, then the insurance isn't worth anything, and you're going to get a bank run. It's a bad situation. Where's the Trump meme coin today? When it was first issued, it went immediately. I believe it was up to about $75. I showed you there the other night when they first introduced this coin to the market. This is the Trump coin. Do you trust the Trump coin? Would you invest your retirement savings in Trump coins? It went from like $75, almost $76 per coin down to now $3.28, losing well over 90% of its value. But in the process of all of this, through this, I will call it a pump and dump, the president has enriched himself, or at least his family has. Some reports saying as much as $1 billion since taking office through market manipulation. Potentially. Maybe. Gotta prove it. But the evidence is right there. And how do you do that? How do you manipulate things by saying what you say? Well, sometimes you just outright have to lie. The president, would he do that? Just ask somebody who used to work for him. Remember Anthony Scaramucci, who had for a very short time, he was the Caroline Leavitt. He was the press secretary for Donald Trump and Trump 1.0. Didn't last long.
Stop Trump from lying. I used to go to rallies. We couldn't stop Trump from lying. I used to go to rallies with him. I did 71 campaign stops with him. We all own this, by the way, and so I've owned it more openly than others. We would come up from the campaign rally. We'd go back up onto the plane. I'd look over at him and say, what the hell did you say that for? That wasn't anywhere near the truth. He would be loosening that red tie and getting himself another shirt. He always changed shirts in between these rallies. And he would say, what the hell difference does it make? No one cares. And in fact, if I say it often enough, people will believe it. He told Leslie Stahl that. He said that if I just keep repeating it, Trump is a smart guy. People shouldn't underestimate him. He once said to me, 1 billion people know who I am. 500 million of those people hate my effing guts. He goes, but think of the possibilities on the other 500 million. And he's selling them Bibles and Bitcoins and all different types of things. So I guess the point is Trump make it worse for all of us because now politicians look at this and say, okay, all politicians lie. That's the same way you and I are breathing. But now Trump has made it even bigger. We couldn't stop Trump from.
He's making it worse for them. He's making it worse for everyone. But I'll show you this. This blew me away because this just posted just a short time ago. If I can find it, here we go. Yeah, here we go. Let me share this one with you. You're worried about Canada becoming the 51st state? Well, you can breathe a sigh of relief tonight because Trump apparently is given up on the idea. On second thought, on Truth Social, he posts, after watching Canadians see their country getting much worse than under Trudeau and increasing their support for Carney, I'm no longer interested in having Canada as the 51st state. We don't need that liberal cancer in America. Thank you for your attention to this matter. President Donald J. Trump. I'm going to go to the chat. I think that's a pretty significant development. Anybody else? Just checking the chat. Checking the chat. I want reaction to Trump's announcement that he's giving up on the 51st state idea. News flash, breaking. Read all about it, extra. Hello. Just wondering what your reaction is. Jubilee, yay! Vicky, yay! We don't need you either, and I think he is lying. The lesser evil, Pierre. I don't know about that one, Linda. I don't know. I think they're all evil. I think Dragon says, I think Trump should be held accountable, would be buying Trump coin. Anybody else on the 51st state statement? Can't believe anything he says. Yeah, that's the point. That is the point, right? Let me bring it back up. Because it's fake. It's fake. When I saw this, I was like, what the hell? No, it's fake. And you can see over here. But this is the point that I'm making. There's so much lying going on, you just don't know anymore what's real and what's fake. Says Trump no longer wants to be his 51st state. This is extremely bullish for Canada. Buy everything. This is the person who posted it. All he says, I can't tell the fakes from the real anymore. Exactly. Neo upped something. This means not even Trump wants to fix that dump of a country. Good luck to everyone who's there. Apparently somebody bought it, or maybe not. I don't know. After losing the Middle East, America needs Canada resources much more than before, says Tim. And Eric Unger, this is fake news, in brackets, unfortunately. And some people picking up, yeah, fake news, buddy. Is it true? Trump is guilty of a lot of things, including not playing with a full deck, but this one is clickbait from AI Connect. Yeah, it's fake. But that is my whole point. You look at, I had to do a double take. I was like, what? Because it looks like something he would post, but no. This shows how deep down into the fog we are, right? This is really the fog of war, because that is what's going on. This is a war. And there is a battle on for our minds tonight, night, every day, 24/7. And there's a lot of lying going on, and lying is a sin. You know, if you are a Christian or even a Muslim, lying is a sin. In certain circumstances, sometimes there are exceptions or accommodations made, we'll put it that way. So I highlight that, and this brings me around to last night's broadcast too, because I was very saddened by what happened last night on this program, because I've made a vow to you, a promise, to never knowingly lie to you. I take that seriously. I also take the part of the mission statement, loosely written here, as it were, that, I'm trying to get everybody closer to the truth. I don't say I have the truth. I'm trying to get you there. And so last night, throughout the broadcast with our friend Brandon, so much, again, like so many issues being brought up, but spun. Now, why? I think because of the way the information ecosystem works, and I can't say exactly why Brandon presented some of these things the way he presented them, but I'm just going to address a couple of things from last night's broadcast because they were brought up again. Specifically, the LNG, liquid natural gas issue, which he has referred to now in both of the broadcasts. We were supposed to focus on new information, but he came back to Canada's Liberals canceling like $1 trillion worth of natural gas sales to overseas markets. And I said, well, Carney has reversed that, and they're pushing ahead with these sales, and some of that is happening right now. He will not accept it. He just listens to me. I showed him content to back it up. But Brandon can't see. He's blinded. And he is willfully blind. He wants to not see it. He just listens, sees, and ignores, and says, no, that's not true, or it's evil. But it is true, and it is happening. And there are multiple reports of it. So I went, and I think when I stood up, I'm told, I haven't watched what he said when I gave the entire platform over to Brandon last night to let him say whatever he wanted, because I had some people in one of the chats and texting me saying, you have to just let him talk. you shouldn't have a voice, which I get from some people sometimes. And in my frustration, after beating myself in the head with this microphone, because of everything that was beating me over the head coming through my headphones, I just said, fine, let him talk. Let him speak. And I walked away. I went for a washroom break. And when I came back, I'm told later that Brandon said, and I haven't checked, but apparently said I didn't bring receipts. So I'll bring some receipts. Now, I know I'm in the process of finishing up Mark Carney's book. It's long, and it is deep. It is heavy-duty reading, especially if you just, unless you just skim over it. There is so much depth there because he gets into a lot of, philosophy and economic theory. But anyway, LNG Canada ramps up output as Iran war threatens global gas supplies. LNG Canada, a Shell-led venture, has ramped up production as exports to Asia this month. This is back reporting March 10th. There's been other reports since then. LNG, liquid natural gas exports from Canada have increased. And they're ramping up even more right now because of what's going on in the Middle East. All cargoes have been sent to Asia, with 2 heading to Japan, 2 to South Korea, and 1 to the Philippines. The plant appears to be operating close to its full capacity of 14 million metric tons per year, according to the LSEG data. And I'll just pull that down, and for more receipts, I'll go to that there's even more coming. Here's the news release on what the federal government is doing with regard to this. Right there. Prime Minister announces first projects to be reviewed by the new major projects office, and included in that is LNG Canada Phase 2, Kitimat, British Columbia. So that's in process. That reverses the Trudeau policy. And then there was a second announcement later. There's another news release about that came out weeks later. This one was back from September, and all of this is progressing through the process, and I don't know what else to tell you except that we're exporting more LNG, more liquid natural gas than we have before. Production is up, shipments are up, and there are plans to do a whole lot more. And those processes are in process. So I'll go to another one. I wasn't lying. I wasn't just making it up. Here are the receipts. This is what I was saying, and there's another article. LNG Canada sharply boosts exports to Asia as global supplies tighten. Okay, so there's the receipt on that. I'm not lying. And I have receipts, and I showed you the receipts. There are a bunch of things from last night that here's another one. And this is like right now happening because of the Strait of Hormuz crisis. From Fortune, the closed Strait of Hormuz is testing Asia's energy security. The answer lies across the Pacific in Canada. Okay? So there's truth there. And you can say what you want about Carney, and I am reading his book. I'm getting into his section now about climate change, and yeah, I've got some concerns there, but I'm reading the whole book to get everything in full context. And also the ESG scores and things like that. He's starting to dig into that. And that's the really controversial stuff. So I'll let you know. Maybe I'll do a review of the book once I've finished reading it and I've had time to digest the information. Brandon brought it up last night. Along with some other things, which apparently just supposed to take at face value. So I don't know, because I was not supposed to have a voice, but I'm going to address this tonight because, respectfully, it wasn't truthful. a lot of what was presented last night on this program. A lot. Why? Well, because I think some of it's fear. I think some of it's fueled by fear. The fear generated and created by spin articles, propaganda, extremist propaganda, where things are taken to extremes. Politics tends to be sort of like that, especially today. American politics has always kind of been like that. Politics in Canada, not so much until maybe since about 2016. And now we get this really, really caustic, toxic, corrosive rhetoric taken to extremes on both sides. And it's all designed to generate an emotional response. And man, does it work, especially when you hit hot button issues and then go for exaggerated, sensationalistic headlines and rhetoric on issues like abortion or euthanasia, healthcare. Now, we were supposed to talk last night about new things on the program. And I bring this up because I think some serious damage might have been done with the untruths. And we were going around in circles because we did spend a lot of time dealing with the same subjects, which I said, I want to deal with new stuff. No. Instead, we got more of this, where Brandon was talking again about Canadians. Like, you think he said 76,000, I've got 74,000 Canadians who died on waiting lists. Okay. I said, of what? No, they died on the waiting list. The suggestion here is that they died because they were on waiting lists. There's a distinction to be made there. It's important. It's not. This is just a raw number. I asked him the first time he was on to clarify. I asked him again last night to clarify, and he didn't. He wouldn't. If you want truth and you say you're going to tell the truth, then in order to get to the truth, you have to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. You have to bring all of the relevant information, not polluted information, not too much information, not information that clouds or confuses. And you don't hold information back. You tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Nothing but the truth. Not extra information, just what's relevant. And when you're dealing with numbers and data, that's important. He didn't do it. Now, I don't know why. What's the motive? Laziness? Just believes that 74 or 76,000 people just died because they're on waiting lists for surgeries in Canada? I said, well, what kind of surgeries are we talking about? This is all surgeries since 20. And that, I don't even think he gave us the year, but it's since 2018. Brandon didn't do the homework. He says, I didn't bring the receipts, apparently. Well, respectfully, I've done the work for you. And it didn't take me long. I just went and found other articles about the same story. And I'm bringing it up tonight because it is important. Because his spin, the narrative that he brings, which other people, separatists who want to break up the country, what they're doing is they're trying to portray Canada's healthcare system as a death trap of some kind, facilitating some death cult, a death government, a genocidal, liberal, socialist, communist government is killing you instead of taking care of you in hospitals. That's what they want you to think. Because, again, it's about trust. If they can undermine trust in the institutions, they're just destroying the country. Because a country only exists if you believe in it. It's not hard to find what I was asking for, which was details for proper perspective and context. It took me a couple of clicks. But you know, when a guest comes on and they're bringing an argument or information or a story or whatever, if they're going to bring it, the onus is on them to be thorough, and it's my job to just ask the questions. But if they don't bring the information, then I guess after 2 broadcasts and 5-6 hours total airtime, if I still don't have the answer, I guess I'm going to have to go digging, because at this point it's done damage. More than 74,000 Canadians have died on healthcare wait lists since 2018, according to this report. I don't dispute it. If that's the stat, if that's the reality, then that's the way it is. It says at least 15,474 Canadians died in 2023-24 alone before receiving various surgeries or diagnostic scans. The true number, blah, 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 likely double. Well, they're extrapolating there, so I don't know that you can put much stock in that, but these are numbers obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request. It comes from... All of this comes from Second Street, which is, not surprising, a right-wing, conservative-leaning think tank media organization out in Saskatchewan. And it's their latest died on a waiting list, a policy brief, which since they began tracking waitlist deaths back in the spring of 2018. And so since then, they've counted, and this is since 2018 to 2026, 74,677 cases where Canadians passed away while waiting for treatments. Now I'm starting to get the information that I was actually looking for. Thank you, National Post. These range from potentially life-saving ones, such as heart operations or cancer therapy, to life-enhancing ones, such as cataract surgeries and hip replacements. Okay? You don't die on the waiting list because you're waiting for cataract surgeries, generally, unless, of course, you can't see and you walk out in front of a bus and you get hit by a bus because you can't see. It's a quality of life issue, so there's a valid discussion to be had there about, well, how long does someone need to wait on a waiting list before getting a life-enhancing surgery? You have to wait 5 years, 2 years, 2 months. And during that period of time, is your mobility restricted, your quality of life? Can you see where you're going? Are you suffering? Are you in pain? But maybe it's not life-threatening. The point is, it doesn't mean that these people necessarily died because they were on the waiting list. They were just on a waiting list when they died. They may have been hit by a bus. They might have been picked up by a pterodactyl and carried back in time to the land of the lost and eaten by a T-Rex. We don't really know because these Freedom of Information requests, which were honored, don't provide all of the data. The report says, quote, "It is clear that money alone cannot solve this healthcare crisis." That's important. That's what I said the other night, the first night. I said, you need the correct information because people always have some knee-jerk reaction to these things where they say, well, to fix that, we just have to spend more money, and that might not be what is needed. It might be something in the system that can be fixed. Maybe you don't have doctors in the right places, or maybe you need to move staff. I don't know. We don't know. But if you're going to have a conversation about this stuff, then you need the valid information. Unless, of course, your only objective is to destroy the country. In which case, you want to make it sound as horrific as possible. And I'm pretty sure that the way this stuff is being presented to our friend, Brandon, is pretty extreme, especially after listening to what he was saying last night. It gets into a little bit more of the nitty-gritty here, too. And we don't have a lot of nitty-gritty. There's not a lot of super detailed information in this. According to the information, health bodies provided 11,682 people died while waiting for an MRI, colonoscopy, or other diagnostic scan, while 3,792 died while waiting for surgery. So they're on waiting lists, but not all of them were waiting for surgery. Some of them were waiting for diagnostic reports and procedures like MRIs. Those are serious issues too, because now you see it's about diagnosing illnesses. And if you don't get an early diagnosis for cancer, you could die from that. So maybe that's the issue. Surgical wait list deaths were down from the previous year in health bodies with 5 years of data. Ontario saw a year-over-year decline from 2,096 in 2022, 2023 to 1,935. Diagnostic scan wait list deaths, and I lost my pop here. Okay, also decreased in Ontario from 9,404 to 7,947. Obviously, that's a positive sign, Craig said from the report. He says, but I don't think anyone should be celebrating that we still have thousands of people in Ontario dying while waiting for surgery or diagnostic scans. Sure. Recent data from Ontario Health suggests 378 people died in 2023, 2024 while waiting for heart surgery or a cardiac procedure, he said. And that's what I was asking Brandon too. How many people died on a waiting list for heart surgery? That alone is an area of extreme concern. And I know that these numbers are a lot better than they were even back in the 1990s when I was covering that as a serious issue in the Ontario healthcare system. And each province is different as well, so you need to break down that way. And there's some data here. Point is, it wasn't hard to find this, but why wouldn't you? Why? Well, because Brandon said it's just simple. It's just that simple. It's just simple. All these people are dying because they're on waiting lists. It's not true. We don't know. We need more information. We need more data from what these hospitals and healthcare providers are putting out if you want to get to better outcomes for patients, for our society, for our country. Of course, if you want a really, really bad outcome, you want to rip it apart, then you just tell people that all these people are dying because they're on waiting lists and the government is trying to kill you. And you could compare what's going on here to other countries, including the United States, and that's really what needs to happen. You need a thorough deep dive into all the data. Oh, but there's more. Also last night, Brandon said that if, and I wasn't prepared for what he was about to say with regard to if the country is, or if Alberta becomes an independent nation state, there's an international law says that surrounding countries, if you're a landlocked country, neighboring countries there's a law that will force them to allow Alberta to punch through with a pipeline to Tidewater. And he says and this is the Separatist plan, and I've since found that other people are talking about this in the same way. Other leaders in the Separatist movement and canvassers like Brandon is. And they're saying if, as an independent nation state, international law says that Alberta would then have the right, and like BC, Canada would be forced through international law to provide access to tidewater, so they would have to put the pipeline through. And I'm like, well, okay, but no, it's not okay. That in itself is a misrepresentation. Now, I think that's what Brandon has been told. And it sounds pretty good to Brandon and a lot of other separatists who hate the country, but it's not really accurate. There is more you need to know about that. And some of it gets pretty darn dangerous, because Brandon says that, and I've since today researching, looking online, other people are saying the same thing, that if Canada doesn't provide access to tidewater through British Columbia or other, maybe out east as well, they'll blockade any traffic going through Alberta from Canada, like other Canadian provinces, to BC, essentially slicing the country in two and prohibiting access, blockading. Do you know how serious that is? That's serious for Alberta. That's serious for Canada. That's an aggressive move. I would say potentially illegal in international law. Pretty sure it would be. Now, the thing is that from the get-go, like a lot of other stuff coming from the separatists out in Alberta, it's not truthful, this statement about access to tidewater. I went and I found the actual document and the international law as it is written. This is from the UN. And here it is. For the purposes of this convention, a landlocked state means a state which has no seacoast. Transit state means a state with or without a seacoast situated between a landlocked state and the sea, through whose territory traffic and transit passes. Traffic and transit means transit of persons, baggage, goods, and means of transport across the territory of one or more transit states, where the passage across such territory with or without transshipment, warehousing, breaking bulk, or change in the mode of transport is only a portion of a complete journey which begins or terminates within the territory of the landlocked state. Bottom line is, it comes down here to Article 125. Landlocked, this is what they're quoting, citing. Landlocked states shall have the right of access to and from the sea for the purpose of exercising the rights provided for in this convention, including those relating to the freedom of the high seas and the common heritage of mankind. To this end, landlocked states shall enjoy freedom of transit through the territory of transit states by all means of transport. The terms and modalities for exercising freedom of transit shall be agreed between the landlocked states and transit states concerned through bilateral, sub-regional, or regional agreements. And 3, transit states, in the exercise of their full sovereignty over their territories, shall have the right to take all measures necessary to ensure that the rights and facilities provided for in this part for landlocked states shall in no way infringe their legitimate interests. It's number 1 that they keep repeating. Sometimes they just leave out 2 and 3. They leave out all of this. They leave out everything underneath it. And that's important because, again, details matter. Are you seeing this? There's the document. Article 125. They cite this part. They generally are leaving this part out. Now, even if they do, they're misrepresenting it. And there's all of this, and then there's all of this, but they're just using, pretty much when they're telling people what they want them to hear, this. Thing is, for 100 years, this is the separatists talking, Canada has been screwing over Alberta, and they can't get the pipelines built. They've proven they can't get it built. There's a blah, 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 and they can't get it done, and nothing ever changes, and we're just going to separate, and then you'll have to do it. You'll have to put the pipeline through because of international law. And if you don't, we're going to blockade everything. International law says, here's what they're not telling you. International law says that a landlocked state needs to be given access to tidewater. Fair. Okay. But the international law also plainly, clearly stipulates that any country that you want to navigate through also has rights. And so really, you have to negotiate. And really, restrictions can be placed on what can be transported through the neighboring country. So BC would have the right, first of all, to negotiate a deal. You'd have to negotiate a deal. You got to pay them. There's going to be a fee then involved. So you're going to have to pay. Oh, but it's all our oil. We're going to pay taxes. Then you just pay a fee to BC. Or if you go the other way, you'll have to pay fees to Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, Quebec. Who knows, unless you start going north. And then you've got tidewater and you've got ice issues up there. So, right? Now, thing is, I don't think the Americans care about what happens up here. I told Brandon last night, if you separate out in Alberta, see what they're not telling the people, what the separatists are not telling you, is that you'll soon have access to the Gulf Coast through the United States and the Keystone XL when that's completed. And there are efforts underway again to resurrect that. And eventually that thing is going to be connected. And I can tell you that if Alberta separates, especially if Trump is still in power, if he survives long enough from all of the corruption that he's involved in right now and he doesn't end up behind bars, I think he's going to swallow up Alberta. I think that's pretty clear. And even if he doesn't swallow it up, they're going to want those pipelines, not just continuing to push oil into the United States, but yeah, they want that stuff going down all the way to the Gulf Coast, especially after all this disruption in the Middle East with Iran, which just shows how vulnerable the Western economies are, the United States, Canada's economy even, to these price spikes and fluctuations in the oil supply, disruptions. So you complete that XL pipeline, it takes the oil down to the Gulf Coast where they have all those refineries which are already set up to refine the exact kind of oil that comes out of Alberta. And now you have access to tidewater. Now you have no legal leg to stand on in making any demands, east or west, within Canada for an additional pipeline to tidewater because you have access to tidewater through the Gulf Coast. Problem is, it's not a good deal. It'll be the deal that you get, but it's not a good deal for Alberta because it still leaves you for a couple of big reasons, huge reasons. But we got a crappy deal. Yeah, you've got a really good deal. You got a better deal coming if you reject this separatism stuff. They build that pipeline down into the Gulf Coast. You go independent. You'll still only have one market where you're selling your oil. Because the U.S. under Trump, they're not going to let you build. They're going to do everything in their power to block you from building pipelines east and west because he doesn't want the oil going to Asia, which is China. Now you build a pipeline to the Gulf Coast, now you've got your tidewater access. You can't then go to any international court and say, Canada's blocking access to tidewater. We get it, or, that's a violate. No, you've got access. There it is. But it's a crappy deal because you'll have to continue to sell your oil at a discount to the United States, already at about $10 per barrel less than you would otherwise get on the in the market, the international market. And two, you're still not going to have access to Asia. You're still not going to have access to China. You're not going to have access to Japan. Not really. Because it can take anywhere from 24 to 30 days for a ship to sail from the Gulf Coast in the Gulf of Mexico to Asia. You leave from the BC coast, you're looking at about 7 days. maybe 14, maybe 18, depends. But yeah, you can do it in like a week. Leave from the Gulf Coast. That's a whole lot more fuel and a whole lot more time, and time, baby, is money. Deal just keeps on getting worse and worse and worse. I keep telling you. Keep telling you. It's not a good deal. Trump needs Alberta worse than ever. Look what's going on tonight. Right here. Iran now threatening to block Bab el-Mandeb Strait, Red Sea entrance. This is another key, well, I think it's one of the 5 key choke points, essentially, or areas of navigation. So this is another strategic move by Iran. Could be massive escalation as a result of this, because it would choke off another one of the world's most important shipping routes. We're already seeing prices escalate, and Iran is saying, we're never going to see oil prices down as low as they were before. We'll see about that. I don't know how it's going to play out. I don't think Donald Trump does either. I don't know how the 51st state stuff is going to play out either. All I know is there's a lot of trust that has been undermined here. And last night on this program, because of the discussion, I'd say even debate on Alberta separatism, there was a lot of information on a lot of different issues that was shared on this program that was not truthful. And I think there was a lot of paranoia. There's a lot of paranoia going on right now, too, especially around China, because China is a major competitor to the United States. And some of the paranoia is warranted because they are a foreign state. They are a communist, authoritarian government. And yeah, they do engage in interference in a lot of countries, including Canada and certainly the United States. But the hypocrisy smacks. Because, well, Brandon is sitting there saying Canada shouldn't be talking to China, doing anything with China, because then it becomes a threat, and then that's why they won't do a deal with us, because it's China, China, China. That's another thing, because he's just got communism on the brain and can't make a distinction between socialism, communism, free market capitalism. Even when I defined for him, with him, and agreed with him what communism is by definition, by bringing up like Encyclopedia Britannica and their definition of it, we still just, it didn't matter. Everything is everything in Canada is commie. I'm a commie, you're a commie, he's a commie, she's a commie. Wouldn't you like to be a commie too? Everybody's a commie. I'm a commie, you're a commie, he's a commie, she's a commie. Paranoid much? There's a commie behind every single tree. Oh, and the hypocrisy. The BS. Look, tonight, on Truth Social, this one's real, from Donald Trump's account. Carney's not allowed to go to China. Carney's not allowed to do a carve-out deal on autos and reduce the tariffs on that for China to allow a limited number of like 49,000 vehicles to come to our country in order to get lower tariffs on Canadian canola to save Western Canada farmers. You're welcome, Brandon and Western Canada, on behalf of the Canadian government and Mark Carney. And I'm not here to defend him. I'm sure that he's going to screw up big time very soon, in which case I'm going to be sitting in this chair criticizing him pretty heavily too. But regardless, here's Trump tonight. My meeting with the highly respected President of China, President Xi Jinping, which was originally postponed due to our military operation in Iran, has been rescheduled. and will take place in Beijing on May 14th and 15th. First Lady Melania and I will also host President Xi and Madame Peng for a reciprocal visit in Washington, D.C. at a later date this year. Our representatives are finalizing preparations for these historic visits. I look very much forward to spending time with President Xi in what will be, I am sure, a monumental event. A monumental event. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. There was an old saying, only Nixon could go to China. And have to revise it, since they're revising the way they refer to the Monroe Doctrine. They're calling it the Don Roe Doctrine. I guess we'll have to start saying only Nixon and Trump could go to China. Let's make a deal. I don't think that he has much in terms of ideological conviction. Unless the conviction and the ideology is gold. It's the golden era. Yeah, you're damn right it is. He's surrounded himself in gold. He's adorned in gold. He's rolling in the gold. Billions and billions of dollars in gold. Billions upon billions. Not just him, but his friends, his oligarchs, the tech bros, the big industries, big pharma, communications, chemicals, glyphosate, blocking China's access to the market, using tariffs and the national, what was it, the legislation so that they can ramp up production for national security reasons, glyphosate, which RFK Jr. previously said causes cancer, but now it's like, well, whatever, President Trump says we need it. It's a national security concern. Without it, everyone will starve to death. And the oil. Oil, oil, oil. It's all about the oil. But, it's, in the end, it's really about a lot more than that, too, right? It's about lives. Lots of lives. Soldiers are on their way to the Middle East tonight. He said that they wouldn't put boots on the ground in the Middle East. I asked some nights ago, what is the real motivation here? Why did we go to war? And I say we. Yeah, Canada too, whether we like it or not, one way or another. It's going to affect us. It is affecting us. It always affects us. But why did Donald Trump go to war with Iran right now? To hide something in those Epstein files? Is it some sort of a religious holy war? Or is he just, I don't know, using it to enrich himself? Or letting his friends enrich themselves by playing games with oil prices? All of the above? How do you do these things? Lie. You lie. Too many lies. You don't get to a good outcome when you lie. Lying is a sin. Brandon is a Christian. Quotes the Bible. I'm not that religious. And how would I know when somebody's lying about something or misrepresenting information that I'm not familiar with? Look, how international law, and you get to jam a pipeline through. The other thing about the pipeline thing is that ultimately, even if they don't get access to tidewater through Texas into the Gulf of Mexico, British Columbia still has rights. British Columbia, as part of Canada, is a sovereign country. Canada is the sovereign country. And doesn't have to be a pipeline because of environmental concerns. They could tell you you have to do it by truck, or they could tell you you have to do it by rail, or they could actually say you have access to tidewater, but not for oil because it's just too dangerous. And they could make a pretty solid case for that too. And then you're going to have to fight tooth and nail in an international court. You've got an uphill battle. In fact, you've got pretty much the same kind of battle on your hands with that you have right now, only worse. And as soon as you finish that XL pipeline to the Gulf Coast, or even if you don't, because it's sitting there partially built, it could be argued in court that you have access to it. You just have to negotiate with those guys. It's a pack of lies. Every one of them gets a hole punched in it as soon as you start to dig into the details. Last night, I left that broadcast and I felt empty inside. Made me want to give up. Because there's something wrong. There's something wrong when someone can be shown something, but they refuse to see it. I'm affected by it. I've caught myself that way. Brandon kept holding up those Trump t-shirts, right? He wasn't doing that because he was being nice. He wasn't trying to sell those shirts. He's trying to embarrass me. I deserve it. Because I made a mistake. Those shirts, I didn't have those shirts produced of Donald Trump with his fist in the air. Those t-shirts. Because I was endorsing Donald Trump. The idea behind them at the time was to begin producing a series of shirts highlighting sort of significant news events. That being pretty significant, an assassination attempt on the President of the United States. But I've still made a mistake because I have said so much positive about Donald Trump over time. And yes, I think that even though I made it very clear I never endorsed him or supported any candidate for any election since sitting back in this chair and conducting this kind of journalism. Very, very clear that, yeah, I was convinced that Donald Trump was a martyr. Donald Trump was a victim. Donald Trump was always being picked on. Donald Trump was always on the receiving end of lawfare. Donald Trump was fighting for us. He was they want to get to me and to you, but he's just in their way. I believed all of that to a great degree. Blinded, amplified by the pandemic. The lockdowns, the mandates on vaccines. Yeah, I'm guilty of it because I wasn't critical enough and I was blinded as well. Even someone like myself who has worked in media all my life, I was not media savvy enough for what I was being bombarded with, have been bombarded with over the past, since 2015, 2016. Everything's changed. And in that way, I have not served you well enough. Not well enough. And like Anthony Scaramucci, who is owning it because he also duped and then became part of the Trump team, traveled, was on the Trump 1.0 administration, became press secretary, and you heard him. Couldn't stop Trump from lying. It's all been lies. If he's opening his mouth, he's probably lying. I wouldn't say lies about everything. Nobody ever does. There's some truth in what he says and what he does, but overall, it's a great big lie. It's the big lie. Jury's out on Carney. Not finished his book yet. And he's just getting started as prime minister, so he has a lot of time to make more big mistakes. We will see. But Trump, pretty darn clear. He once said that, and I'm sure you're familiar with it, that he could stand out in the middle of the street and shoot somebody and people would still support him. Well, he's had people out on the streets shooting people, and people are still supporting him, making excuses for him. Says he's, people think that he's for the people. He's not for the people. He's a billionaire. He can't relate to little people like us. And yeah, you're not going to get rich like Donald Trump. That's always something I think that plays in the backs of people's minds. They think that he's going to make us all really rich. If I get close enough to him, or he's gonna make us all wealthier. We're gonna win. Do you feel like you're winning right now? I wonder what those soldiers are thinking as they travel to the Gulf. A war that he promised wouldn't happen. He lied. And now the lies are so blatant that they're right out in the open. He lied about negotiating with Iran. Clearly, it's not really happening. Or maybe to some degree it is right now, but not the way that he portrayed it. And there were no real actual negotiations going on the other night, back on Monday. Monday, yeah. He lied. He's a liar. Brandon, my friend, last night, willfully blind, refuses to see, doesn't want to, fueled by fear. Canada has problems. The government has problems. A lot of these issues, whether you're talking about like any of the things we're talking about tonight, carbon taxes, pipelines, all of these issues, sure, they're all valid issues. But when you analyze them, when you just look at them through an extremist lens, it's a distortion. If you refuse to see something, that's also a distortion. Because you're not giving yourself all of the truth, you're refusing to look at some of the relevant information. Especially if you're being shown the truth, but if you're not willing to see the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in order to focus on something, you're not going to get to the truth. Now, I can't say that my friend Brandon was outright lying last night. Definitely has an agenda and has the motivation to lie, because he clearly hates Canada. And for a Christian, he's full of a lot of anger. But more importantly, he's full of a lot of fear. I've had to overcome that. I have concerns, but I'm not afraid. They feed on the fear. They fill you full of the fear with the propaganda. They program you with it. Last night, my friend Brandon wasn't talking to me. there was somebody else sitting there. I'm not even sure if it was a person. It was regurgitated information. I was frustrated last night and left feeling empty inside because it sure wasn't a man of God speaking. It was a drone. Repeating talking points. One after the other after the other. Going down a checklist. Unthinking. Fueled with fear. Being used. Like a pawn. I want my friend back. And I want my country back. Or at least I don't want to lose it. I want to keep it so I can fix it. See you guys back here tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern. Love you, Brandon. On the flip side.
Didn't pick this fight, but here it came. Now I wanna play in a traitor's game. They sell us out for a tax cut deal. Shake his hand while they rob and steal. They call us blind, they call us weak, but they're the ones on their knees to the thief. Wave our flag while they burn it down, marching to the sound of a tyrant's crown. Patriots, they're bought and sold. Trade our land for American gold. Singing his tune, dancing his way, but they'll cry for Canada when it's too late. Yeah. Trump traitors, selling us out, burning our home for a tax break now. They stand with the wolves, spit on the brave, but they'll beg for Canada when it's in its grave. They talk real tough, but they bow real low, licking his boots while they put on a show. They chant his name, raise their fists up high, while the real ones fight to keep us alive. They don't fight fair, they twist the truth, say they're the future, but they kill the roots. They laugh now, but watch them run when the north wind howls and justice comes. Traitors, selling us out, burning our home for a tax break now. They stand with spit on the brave, but they'll beg for Canada when it's in its grave. One day soon the tide will turn, and traitors pay when the fires burn. No statues raised, no banners flown, just names in dust where the traitors roam. Selling us out, burning our home for a tax break now. They stand with the wolves, spit on the brave, but they'll beg for Canada when it's in its grave. Trump traitors, Trump traitors, Trump traitors. Trump traitors! Trump traitors! Shame.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.